This is the Ink, Pray, Love podcast. We talk all things health, wealth, and community connection. Let's go. Welcome back to this episode of the Ink, Pray, Love podcast. I'm so happy to have you back and join us. This podcast is here to help you grow, to help you have a daily dose of something that will enrich your life. And really, selfishly, it's things that I want to learn and I want to grow from and that I can share with everyone here. So I've been studying a lot of how the brain works, brain function, mindfulness, and I just really want to be a smarter human. I had so many concussions growing up and I felt like I got clearly dumber. So when I didn't want to be dumber or as dumb, I want to be smart. So I started studying, and whenever I'd find out books that were on mindfulness or they were on how to function at a higher level, I would eat them up and then see that they worked. So today you're going to learn from a professor at Rutgers University. She is an epic human. She wrote a book that I read. So this is how this whole thing came about. Went to the bookstore. I saw this book, Rethinking Intelligence, and I was like, oh, cool, a radical new understanding of human potential. I like those things. And it just was a cool cover. So I just picked it up. And the book was massive to show me how to change the way I think and to actually get smarter at this age. I'm like, I can be smarter now. I can actually train my brain better. That is amazing. Before I have Dr. Rina Bliss come on, please hit the subscribe button, follow, share, all those things, because that helps me get guests like this on my show. It helps me grow the podcast, and I'm doing this for free for you. So hook me up. Please do all those things. Without further ado, Dr. Rina Bliss, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
It was super cool because I shared your book and I saw, oh, she has Instagram. Cool. And that's the power of social media these days. I was like, I loved your book. Thanks. And you responded. And I was like, cool. This is great. Do you want to be on my podcast? And you were so open and sweet about it. And I really appreciate your time. I know you're really busy with research and professoring and all the things that you do. So really, thank you for coming.
Oh, no, it's totally my pleasure. I mean, this is what I did this for. I've been writing books in the academic realm and in like, science and science journal articles and stuff like that for a really long time. But like one day I woke up and was like, wait a minute, I want to be able to communicate all of these really important ideas to everybody and like people from all walks of life. I don't want it just to be, like other people who study the same stuff as me, And so it was really important to hear from you and to like know that people living in a different city from me, a different country from me, although we have overlapped in the past in Indonesia, but that's for later. But it's totally. I mean, they're just like all kinds of ways that I would never have known had you not reached out to me, and I'm so happy to be here.
You're probably like, this guy has his head tattooed. What the fuck? He likes my book.
No. I mean, the more differences there are, amongst all of my readers and all of the people who are really interested in the message, like the more that it's really doing its job,
I love that. And that's a beautiful segue into differences because this book was a lot about rethinking how we look at intelligence. And intelligence just isn't IQ. There's many levels to it. And the old system was colored people or people of ethnicities aren't as smart as white males. And that was like the thing. And it was, you see it in racism from, forever. But that was a big deal. And now when we rethink and look at intelligence and the different markers of it, we see that's not the case. That's absolutely not the case. I'd love for you to pre-frame that. Let us know how they were marking intelligence and what you think of intelligence as.
Right. So it's true what you just said, except for one thing, which is that IQ is still kind of the main way that we talk about intelligence. So unfortunately, I'm a professor, and as you said, and I deal with SAT tests. I deal with IQ. I deal with, all of these different standardized tests. That's the only way to get into the school where I teach. And,
Mhm.
it's a public school. So it's one of the largest and most diverse schools in the whole United States. And so it's like, it's basically a, sub any school for this school, and you will get the system that we are in, which is an IQ based system. And so that's still the dominant way that we look at intelligence. And I wrote the book because I have been studying genetics, and I don't have to go that much into that part of it, but basically there's this whole other science of the brain that has been emerging in the last 20 years or so. And that science has shown us that we are all primed to learn things from our environments. And that's the way that I redefine intelligence in the book. I say, let's think of intelligence not as IQ or some kind of test score. Like, that's just too easy to just say, like, oh, you're just as smart as that test score that you got, you have it in hand, and you're getting into school, or you're not getting into school, or whatever is, this is all happening to you because of this test. It's like, that's just bullshit. The reality is that our brains are hardwired to pick up things from our environments. And there are people who have had a lot of concussions, like yourself, or have different reasons why they have a different divergent or neurodiverse kind of profile, and they have different ways of thinking. And we all have different ways of learning and getting material and information into our minds, right? So we're different. And the important thing to know is that no matter how strange and different we look, or how low we score on a test or whatever, it's like we are still primed to gather information and to improve our situation, improve our lives. We want to do better for ourselves. We
Yeah.
always want that.
Yeah.
So it's like, when we start to think of intelligence instead of as a score or something really like limiting like that, and instead think of it as like awareness of your environment.
Mhm.
That just opens it up completely to everybody. All of us are doing this. We don't even plan it. We're just doing this all the time. It's like, are we aware that we're aware, or are we not aware that we're aware? Which is why it really, comes down to things like, mindfulness. And yeah, we can get into
I
those.
love that. That was the part. So I almost bailed on this book because it was really good at the start. I loved hearing your story of growing up in Indonesia and being mixed race, not quite knowing where you stood in that, how hard the school system was, and then moving to the States. Like I loved, oh, the story of it. Cool. This professor has a backstory. I was like, great. I
Mhm.
love hearing that. And then when it got into a bit of the chemistry, neurobiology, blah 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 stuff, I was like, uh. And
Like,
then I'm doing this
oh.
program 75 hard, and you have to read 10 pages of a nonfiction book every day. But the rule is you can't quit on the book. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay. And I'm so happy I didn't, because it was only one chapter, really. It was
Yeah.
like one chapter that I was like, science. Then it
Mhm.
got past that, and it was the next chapter was extremely valuable for me
Yeah.
about mindfulness. And that's a big part of my life, is studying mindfulness, and how that literally makes us smarter, being aware of your surroundings and your situation and being present in your body. And I was like, oh my god, doing this is making me smarter. So just like when, I was putting salt in my water so I could, actually hydrate deeper and better and more efficiently, I'm like, this is good for me, yay, and I'll do it
Mhm.
more. And that was
Mhm.
just like when I'm just being present in what I'm doing. I'm like, this is making me smarter. And that was my big light bulb from this book. There was
Mhm.
many, but that was my number one takeaway out of this book was, if I practice mindfulness, I'm literally becoming a smarter human. And then I felt, actually, my brain light up. I felt
Mhm.
me get more aware. And I really love that. To go back to the point, because I really want to go into the mindfulness section. That's going to be a big part of this podcast, because I know that's the most valuable thing that I really am excited to dig. But the capabilities, and this is what I would rank intelligence in as a lot as well, is how
Mhm.
capable of a human are you? And that was, can you put me anywhere and I'll figure it out? And
Mhm.
and that's one thing, like the hustler aspect of me. Like, you can put me anywhere in the world and I'll be like, I'll make it work. I'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
I'm able to read patterns. I'm able to assess information, and I'll act. And that's something that I've really base intelligence on. And I love that that was supported in this book of your surroundings are a dynamic environment, and maybe it's not algebra like
Right.
like in the school system, like I'd have trouble with that. No, maybe it's how do you make this work, or how do you get to point A to point B efficiently and quickly, da 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 da. And so I'd love to hear more on how does your brain process information, and categorize it, and like how does that work for us to actually then become more capable in taking in information in dynamic situations?
Definitely. So there are, a bunch of different kind of moments in the thought process, right? And so the first thing is you put your attention on something, and your brain, like different parts of your brain fire up and start, communicating and saying like, okay, this is what's going on. And the this is what's going on interpretation part of it happens based on your memory, right? So you have like a bunch of files in a sense, right? Where you're like kind of accessing the files. What happened in a prior situation that was similar to this one? What do I want to, bring from what I have back here in my file cabinet? And like, what do I want to? And at the same time, you have to keep having your attention on the situation. You still have to like be taking in more data, more information, so that you can, it's kind of like a cycle that goes on, right? So it's like taking in the information, checking it with what you know, taking more information, checking it with what you know,
Mhm.
applying some of what you already know, but taking in more information. That part's important because that's the part where you're saying like, okay, I'm going to learn something new. That's the part where you're open to something new being in there, not just the old file cabinet stuff, right? But like actually like something new. And through that iterative process, you come up with new strategies. And so it's like, exactly what you're talking about. We are really, like, again, hardwired just to do this process constantly.
Mhm.
It's like a person with a brain injury is still going to be doing it in their own way, right? So they're going to be taking in whatever little bits of information to do whatever processing that they can do, right? And then a person who is, alert and ready and actually has read up at such as yourself, and is has proper hydration, has like the peppermint oil or whatever, like, nootropics to kind of like stimulate you and kind of like get you even more alert, even more so. It's like you're just doing that cycle, that iterative cycle. Um, and I think that it's that dance between, taking in information, comparing it with what you know, applying some of what you know, but staying open enough so that you can get new information and create new solutions, right? So that's like how I would describe the moments of thought. and
I love
and I
this.
like to talk about it in terms of moments because it's like, we think of like a moment as being like almost like something that just kind of comes and goes and it's like fleeting and everything, but it's like in within that moment there are like all these other little moments. And keeping your attention and your focus and keeping your eyes open, your ears open, your senses open, and your mind open, that's just the key to really having the most creative output, right?
I love this.
Mhm.
Absolutely. There's something really cool about that, to stay open to learn as well as catalog your past experiences for wisdom, so you can recognize patterns and you're like, I know this type of thing, but also this
Mhm.
thing is a new thing. And what can I learn
Yes.
from this situation? So we're not just judgy as fuck. We're able to actually just come
Yeah.
into it open. It works in so many ways. I really love that, and I love to let our listeners know that that open attitude when you're facing something that you might know, but you're
Hmm.
open and curious for a new thing. I was reading this book now. After I finished yours, I jumped on Meditation is Not What You Think. I think it's Jack Canfield.
Mm.
And there's this law that he mentions in it, and I forget the term of the law, but it's when we have novel and new experiences, it slows down time, and things
Mhm.
appear longer. Like when we're children and we're having all these new experiences, summer felt like forever, right? And then
Yeah.
now, and it's a system when there's more, less order and more chaos, time
Mhm.
slows down, and when there's
Mhm.
more order. And they say chaos as in just disorderly things, not like, fucking tornado or
Yeah.
something. It's just like,
Yeah.
so and then when we have order, routine, and just like when we're older and we're just go to work and every day, time super speeds up. And I know all of us have been
Yeah.
like, where did the last 10 years go now that we're over 20 years old? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And so I loved that, because it also, then they said, you don't have to have new chaotic or consistent novelty experiences for your life to be longer, in the sense that you're there present enjoying it. What you need to
Mhm.
do is be mindful of the
Yeah.
moments. And the more that you're mindful of the present moment and aware of what's happening, you then savor your life, and it slows down in the sense that you're really here and not just
Yeah.
on autopilot. And I felt that was such a beautiful segue into your mindfulness section
Mhm.
of present moment awareness is a superpower.
Yeah. Yes, it really is. I mean, mindfulness does two really important things for us. One is that it reduces stress. It reduces our stress levels, which is a really important part of, keeping our brain alert in a positive, open way and not closed down in a negative, scared, fighting kind of way. If you're, it's like if you're scared and like stressed and you're on alert for like all these potential slights or grievances or like everything's bad, everything bad's about to happen kind of,
Yeah.
you're in a like a closed state, right? But if you are stress free or at least less stressed, and mindfulness does that for you, right? It literally lowers your stress levels, and it opens up your your brain's pathways so that you can be more clear, think more clearly, use your attention, focus better, right? All of those things. So it helps in that kind of way. Then you have an open heart, right? You're not like closed, like
Mm.
worried, fearful. You're open, ready, listening, hearing, learning, right? Your whole body is alive. And so that's one side of it. And then the other thing is that it really helps you tap into what I'm saying is your true intelligence, that awareness, the
Mm.
awareness of the environment. Like when you're afraid and you're closing yourself down to the environment, what are you going to learn from it? Whereas if you're really like deep into, you're like, oh, I want to soak this up. Like, what can I learn from here? I'm like sitting down, I'm talking to you, I can learn so many things. There's so many opportunities, myriad opportunities. I just have to pick which one I want to,
Mm.
to get into, right?
I love
And
this.
so, yeah, it's just really like mindfulness really is where you get that awareness. And at the end of the book, I talk about how I kind of wish that we just used a different word in a way for intelligence, like,
Mm.
but to me, awareness is really where we need to get to, instead of focusing on the thing we associate with its intelligence, this like, level or something like that. It's like, fuck all that, it's like we need to like be into like the awareness. We all have this power.
I love that, because it really levels the playing field, just in case you weren't
Mhm.
good at school. I was a gifted student, and they wanted to put me into a school for gifted children until I started
Mhm.
getting all these concussions. And I also grew up in a really rough area, so I should have gone to that gifted school because it would have gotten me out of the hood. And like my school had like machete toppings and crazy shit happening.
Oh,
It was really intense.
yeah.
And then I started getting concussions, and I noticed my brain changed. And I noticed, and also the best and worst thing to happen to a 13-year-old happened to me when me and my best buddy walked into his dad's basement, and he was our baseball coach. And
Mhm.
and so like I grew up with this guy being like our t-ball coach, and my friend's like, "Want to see what's in this room?" And I'm like, "Okay." And we opened it, and it was all these lights hanging from the ceiling and all these big trees in there and tin foil on all the walls. There's a marijuana grow up in the basement. And we're like,
Oh.
oh, and I was like, what is this? And it was just like the worst thing to happen to us, because we just had free weed, and we'd
Oh,
start
yeah.
selling pot. Like, we were bad. And so
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like a bad thing to have all that weed at a developmental brain, your brain's
Yeah.
developing. So I clearly got dumber. I could really feel school. My priorities
Yeah.
changed, wrong crowd. So
Mhm.
environment. And so my environment had shifted in a way that it wasn't promoting a challenging and like in a good way, um,
Mhm.
a growth facilitating, environment,
Yeah.
it wasn't good. So that environment aspect, is super important. But then again, you see these like dudes in Africa who built a car out of like plastic or whatever. Like, you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about? There's these guys that
Yes.
are like
Yeah.
hyper intelligent in the worst slums you've ever seen, and you're like,
Yeah.
so what
Yep.
did environment, because that's a part of this book as well. What does
Right.
environment have to do with um, how your brain works and intelligence?
I mean, the environment can be nurturing or it can be stultifying, and I have like I've faced a lot of challenges that are, similar to some of, and I actually had some similar experiences to what you went through with drugs and with, I sold drugs, for a
What?
time.
What?
Yeah.
Wait,
Yes,
what?
I did.
Dr.
Because
Rina
I
Bliss,
also
a
was like,
professor, was
from
dealing
this really
drugs.
kind of messed up background. And yeah, so,
Oh
it's
my
like
god.
all kinds of, I was going in a lot of different directions and many of them were super dangerous and
Yeah.
life threatening, so I
No
spent my
fucking
whole
way.
teenage years like doing the wrong thing all the time. And also doing the so-called right thing by acing all my tests and getting
Mm.
into college and all of that stuff. But I actually, not many people know this, but I chose the college that I chose because it was where I had a drug hookup. That's yeah, that's how messed up I was back then too.
Rita,
But
that was not in this book.
no, I haven't shared that with anybody except for my family, basically. And I don't. Sorry, mom. Sorry. Like, I don't think that everybody knows this thing about me, but
This is amazing. This is an Ink
yeah.
Pralove exclusive.
Yeah. I mean, I also had that kind of, I had an environment that was not supporting me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it wasn't because my parents didn't try as hard as they could in their with their constraints, but they were super constrained, like super,
Mm.
super, super constrained. And so, because of their constraints, they could only support me so much. And also because I was doing so well in school, even though I had one year where I almost didn't go at all. And, I was so good at faking notes and stuff like that, but I was absent so much that they sent a note home about me, not having too many excused absences, right? So it was like, your daughter needs to come back to school, basically. And so it's like, but I still maintained the GPA and the whole thing. And so my family didn't know that I was,
Mm.
in so much trouble and having,
Yeah.
all of these crazy experiences and going in
Yeah.
in a less savory direction.
You're
But
a dope
but the
dealer.
thing,
This is amazing.
yeah, but the thing is that back to the environment thing is that
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like in the best of all cases, you have family that's supporting you, you have
Mm.
schools that support you, that treat everybody as intelligent and that push everybody for success in whatever way that resonates with them. So if it's academic, that should be part of it. Everybody should feel that they can be academically successful, and not
Yeah.
that some of us are smarter and some of us are gifted or
Mhm.
gifted at all, right? And
Yeah.
that the other ones are like, like can't learn or something like that. Like that's the way that schools are set up today now. And um in the best of all situations, we have nurturing environments everywhere that we go as children and growing up into adolescence, but that's just not the case. And so I think that your example of people inventing things and just tinkering and figuring out how to make really complex systems with very little resources at hand, I think that just shows you that like that's that thing inside of us, that thing
Mhm.
that we want to, no matter how little we have, we want to make the best of our situation, and we want to invent things, and we want to know things, and we want to like commune around information, and we want to commune around connection. We want to connect, right?
I love that. Absolutely. And I think a lot of my listeners are like me and like you,
Hmm.
underdogs. Like we didn't
Mhm.
have it perfect growing up. And I think that's why people are gravitated towards this podcast, because they want more, they want to learn. They're about health, wealth, family, spirituality, leveling up. But it's not like we were born in a country club or anything. Like silver
Mhm.
spoons. It's a lot of the people that resonate with me is because we were underdogs. And
Mhm.
I think it's super empowering that we're able to level ourselves up and that we're
Mhm.
able to then use our environments for like a training ground to become smarter
Yeah.
and finding information in the way that we can. Already, if you're listening to this podcast, you're being resourceful, you're using what's available for you, for free. Awesome. But you're able to then get information and then use it. And then what I really love is when people are able to take information from this and then action it.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And so I really love that. There was another thing, the curious aspect, just to tie that out, because I had a good analogy for that as well. Um, because if we just think we know everything and we're closed, it's intensely boring. I'd
Mhm.
say as a lifestyle. And my perfect example is if you go to a party and there's some person that wants to start a conversation with you, and you're like, fuck this guy in particular. There's nothing I'm going to learn out of this. Like, that's like
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't need to have this conversation
Yeah.
until I'm like, well, obviously that's not fun. That's not a fun
Mhm.
way to be. Get
Mhm.
curious, get
Yeah.
get curious. And
Yes.
so and I'll steer the conversation in a way that's actually interesting for me. So I'll
Mhm.
move it into something that I want to hear, something that's
Right.
interesting, so I can learn something or just be entertained in a way that, we're not just like, so what do you do? Cool. Did you watch the hockey game? No. Okay. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So do
Yeah,
you
I
go
think
ahead.
yeah, that's kind of like the next step after you realize that you're supposed to be aware, you're supposed to be
Mhm.
tapped in to this moment, right? And that even with this, person who seems super boring or super, just like even sometimes parties, it's like you meet people who feel vapid or something like that, it's just like, oh, but it's like you're going to learn something, even if it's just learning something how not to communicate. It's like,
Yes.
okay, this person's showing me a way I don't want to be.
Yeah. Totally, totally, and I think it's really good. I try to gamify it, so then I'll look for patterns in
Mhm.
people to be like a category of like an archetype of a person or like that type of person. So I'll be somewhere and like my new tattoo shop in Vancouver right now. It's in a pretty like colorful area. It's kind of like our Brooklyn of
Oh,
Vancouver, right?
cool.
And so it's really cool, but it's also it has character. Like there's some characters
Yeah.
on this street, right? And so then I can just look and just like, oh, that's that type of character, or like what type
Mhm.
of person is this?
Yeah.
And catalog how they act, how they talk, how they think, and
Yeah.
then that old information, the wisdom. Oh, that's
Mhm.
kind of like this person I knew then, and
Mhm.
then be curious. You know, how are they? What can I learn about this type of person, or are they different? And so gamifying it in my head so I can get a little analytical, because
Yeah.
it keeps me from getting hyper bored. And that's the other thing, as you can tell, I have a lot of energy. I'm fairly certain, and I never got diagnosed, but like I had attention deficit disorder. And I feel
Mhm.
like that really got so much worse after the concussions. I couldn't focus. I
Mhm.
could barely read a page. It takes me a couple times to read a page. I
Yeah.
sometimes like trail off and then I have to be like, what the fuck did I just read and do it
Yeah.
again? you know?
Yeah.
Um, and training the brain, um, to gather my awareness and actually pay attention, that
Mhm.
was really difficult for me. And, that's a huge problem these days, is the ability
Yeah.
to actually pay attention. Um,
Yeah.
what's the link there for you on intelligence and actually being able to pay attention?
Well, I think that the everybody I know who feels like they're, having a hard go of reading something and they're like, going back at it and back at it and back at it. What they might be surprised to find out is that that is how a professor who writes books and reads books for a living, and talk and like reviews books and talks about books, and my life is books, and yet I have the same experience. It's like I have to like go with highlighters or go with like,
Mm,
like printing out a sentence and then like looking at it in a, in like a physical form. And then like also, taking, yeah, and skimming and just dropping whole pieces of stuff, because it's like not written to a way that I can consume it.
mhm,
And I think that that's all just like the ingenuity that we bring to learning. It's like
Hmm.
we have our workarounds, and that's the number one thing I know about all of my friends who have ADHD that was diagnosed as in their adulthood. I have friends who were diagnosed when they were teenagers, of course, but like I have friends who weren't diagnosed till they were like in their 30s, um, and I'm sure I know a person or two who is like in their 40s getting diagnosed kind of thing,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah,
like that late stage diagnosis thing is just real because people didn't really know about it as much 10 years ago, right? And
yeah.
so um and know what to look for. And so the whole game with that is like making workarounds, finding ways to get the information in, at least the critical parts, and also just triaging, like saying like I don't need to know everything. I just need to know a few things. What
Yeah.
speaks to me, what hits me and makes my heart, flutter
Mm.
and dive into that stuff and then like let the other stuff fall away. I think that is what I'm talking about. That's intelligence. It's like just being aware of that you're doing that, and that you're doing that work and that you're getting it in some way, getting the information in. It really is to me the opposite of the way that, again, in the present education system, we teach kids, which is just to be like, this is the correct list that you're supposed to memorize. I will test you on it later. If you have memorized it, you are smart. If you have not memorized it, you are dumb. Like you're not going to
Yeah,
college, you're not going
yeah.
anywhere, and that kind of, and it's just, to me, it's such a shame that's how the powers that be do things,
That's a
but
thing. The
yeah.
totally, because I remember, like, I was a bad kid, so I had a probation officer in when I
Oh.
was in high school, right? At the end, we were bad, and that he told me, he's like, "You probably have ADD," like that, and so, that was, like, the
Mm,
diagnosis, and that's where I was always like, "Okay, I have ADD." But
yeah.
then when I now in my at this age, I'm like, "Nah, man, that guy's not a doctor. Why did I
No.
diagnose myself listening to
Yeah.
him for all that time?" And really that changed my mind for a little while. I'm like, well, I'll never go to university. I might as well just save up, sell as much drugs as possible and create a real estate development company. And then I'll go legit then. That was like my plan. Right.
Yeah.
And actually at that age, I was like, I'll never go legit. Yeah. Get money. And I was just like, so dumb.
Mhm.
Um, until I went on my spiritual journey and
Yeah.
I left the dope game and moved to Bali. And I was like, I am going to work my ass off to study things that I care about. And I saw
Mhm.
the direct link between attention and like actual motivation, like rewarding things. Like I'm learning something that's rewarding to me, like how I
Yeah.
can become smarter if I practice mindfulness. Awesome. I'll eat that up. And I actually like pay attention then.
Yeah.
And then to see the benefit, like, sorry, like you're winning the game, like what
Mhm.
you're learning works and receiving, the fruits of your labor and attention that like this
Mhm.
is directly benefiting my life. That started showing me I'm able to excel as a human. And then my growth was rapid because I broke that stigma of you can't learn things. And I was like, no,
Mhm.
I can learn what I want. And that was like, bacha. I was able to really, really expand as a human rapidly and then launch a bunch of businesses really fast because I was like, no, I'm hyper capable. Sure, I have trouble paying attention to certain things that don't actually like engage me, but as soon as I'm engaged, I am a rocket ship. And that was so freeing for me to break that stigma of like you're
Yeah.
this,
And the reason why that person characterized you as, like ADD, just, your brain's dysfunctional, your problem,
Mhm.
is because that's what people do, to brown young males,
Mm, mm.
young teenage brown males. That's what
Yeah,
happens, right?
yeah,
It's like you're a problem. We're gonna discipline you. We're gonna send you to. We're gonna make sure that you're in the system. You're systematized, if not
yeah,
institutionalized, incarcerated. Something we're gonna assign a person to watch you and let you know you're being watched, right? And you're gonna know that we think less of you. You're not college material.
yeah.
You're prison material,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Please,
it's
like,
like a
go get a
person who
trade.
just, I mean, that educator is basically is sadly one of millions of educators who do
Mhm.
the same thing. And, so unfortunately, it took years from you. And at the same time, fortunately, you found your way, right?
Yeah.
You found your way. Um, I
Yeah, I
think
love
one
that.
of the big things for me is about writing this book is just giving people the confidence in what they already do,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
Like seeing that like I am growing and I'm being intelligent. I am intelligent, right? Like I'm just doing it. I didn't realize I was doing it this whole time, right?
Mhm. I love that. Yeah, it's so liberating to learn that we can become smarter at any age.
Mhm.
And that blew me away because, like, I was really low on myself when I got clean from my drug addiction, stopped drug dealing, and
Mhm.
moved to Bali to go be a hippie and do the Eat, Pray, Love thing. Like, I
Mhm.
really, that's why it's Ink, Pray, Love, by the way, because I saw
Yeah.
Eat, Pray, Love.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Story checks out. A-
Totally.
and I learned Indonesian because I knew I needed to actually, and I was bugging you. I was like, my Indo's probably better than yours because you're saying that you moved away so
No,
young, right?
yeah, it's no. I mean, it's yours is I'm sure way better.
But I'm in my Punjabi is not very good, so I'm like that's my heritage language, So I was like, but
Yeah.
then what was really cool about going and learning another language was it fired off all these new things in my brain that I was like, wow, I can learn a thing. And
Mhm.
to learn a thing and then practice it, that's directly benefiting me because I'm making Indonesian friends, and my Indo friends are like, good job. Like they see
Mhm.
how quick I really took it seriously. So they saw
Yeah.
how quickly I advanced and the respect I got, the connection I got, the care I got from practicing a thing and seeing me win at that game.
Mhm.
It liberated me from being like, no, you're just a dumb drug dealer. You'll never do anything else in your life.
Mhm.
It's like, no, actually, you are just a need to be pointed in the right direction and you'll rapidly succeed if you see you're winning the game that you want to play.
Mhm.
And that was so important for me. And that aspect of people being able to study and learn that their brains are, I think you called it in this book, there's neuroplasticity, but you're
Yeah.
able to shift the brain. How does that work? You can get minorly sciencey here, but like I said,
Okay, minorly.
I didn't go to
So
school. Okay?
yeah. So neuroplasticity is just the fact that your brain is constantly changing and growing and developing your whole life. It's not just something that happens when you're a baby or a child. It's something that, it's like definitely happening quickly, rapidly when you're a baby, and then still rapidly when you're a young child. And it slows down and changes as you get older, but it continues on. That's the amazing part. And so, the main thing that I guess I'll give to your listeners, followers, viewers, is
Mhm.
that your brain, based on what you put your attention towards, it kind of invests energy, and it invests, kind of all its resources into that thing. And so as you retreat from different things like drugs, like you're not going to, do drugs anymore, like your brain stops using itself for that purpose. It forms new networks and new relationships around the new stuff that you're interested in, and that's something that happens your whole life. So it's like if you were to like go back into drugs, you'd be marshaling your brain's resources for drugs again, but you're not going to do that. So
Yeah.
and I think that that's one of the things about aging that I think people misunderstand. It's one of our biggest misassumptions about our brains, is that like you get worse as you get older. There are things that your brain won't be able to do as well as when you were a baby, for example. Like when you're a baby, you can learn, as many languages as you want to, and hold them all in your brain at the same time. When you're a child, you can learn several languages. And, when you're an adult, you can still learn a few languages, but it's going to be really harder, right, to do that. And as you get like older and older, whatever. But the other thing is like your experiences change. And so like for me, I, having kids, I have three little kids, and I still am in the like, lack of sleep zone. It's, something that started when I was pregnant and is just, continued on. And the thing about that is that it's real. It's like I can't, come with the full clarity that I would after having 9 hours of real sleep. I have like 4 hours of broken sleep, the but so I lose that part of it. I lose that kind of, um, thing of my youth before, all that kind of that shift in my life. But what I gain is that I'm gaining mastery over my intelligence. I'm gaining mastery because I know more and I care about the things that matter to me. I care and I invest in things that are healthy for me. So it's like as you get older, you actually gain mastery over things that are beneficial to you. Before, I used to use all of those resources for drugs, for
Mhm.
people pleasing, for seeking approval, trying to be like, the best, the hottest, the smartest, the coolest, the, whateverist, right? And it's like now I'm like, okay, I don't need to be the ist, I just need to like feel and be aware of my surroundings. I need to feel and be aware of the people who I'm so lucky to have around me, and I just want to benefit from my
Mhm.
surroundings. I want to learn. I want to learn more. I'd rather be where I'm at now with like no sleep and with like brain fog and parent fog and whatever the fog, all the fogs, COVID, post COVID fog and all the
Yeah,
fogs. Like I've had them
all the
all.
fogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I'd rather be the person I am now, getting mastery over my own, awakening. I'd rather
Mhm.
be that person than be the person who, was striving in all those really unhealthy ways.
Wow. That's amazing. I really love that. To gaining mastery over our intelligence because you got time on the clock and you're getting just more wisdom and more ability to read the patterns and yeah, it's hard. Like I'm constantly tired right now. I launched too many businesses at once. It's
Yeah.
fun, but it's a lot since I've been back in Vancouver. But the whole thing around that to gain mastery over intelligence, I really love that. And
Mhm.
how would you say if I was like, Rena, I want to get smarter today. I want to be smarter. By the end of this month, how do I be rapidly smarter? What would you tell me to be like, Aaron? This is how you be a smarter person.
I say nurture your intelligence, nurture it. Give yourself the time and the space and the grace to put your mind towards the things that really matter to you. So it's like if you're overstretched, if you feel like, I've got one too many businesses, or you feel like, I'm doing one too many things, it's like take that space away from and that time away from whatever is too much and like put it towards more. If it's inward, that's great. If it's outward, that's fine too, but like just yeah, I think that's rather than like think of it like, oh, read more of this or, study more of this. That's like definitely the traditional way of getting smarter, is to like just acquire more information. But I'm like, no, actually be smarter about what you're using your brain for, right? Just like figure out what are the things that I really want to prioritize right now, and go deep into those things and create more of those mindfulness moments like you were saying, stretch time.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Those mindfulness moments are a game changer for me. And the more that I'm
Mhm.
practicing them now, I'm really enjoying them. Just literally like, look at the leaves on that tree. Oh, wind.
Mhm.
And just like, I feel wind. It's so simple. Like, it's so, like, so simple. And I'm like, I'm happier now. Like, I feel good. And then to back it up from this book, my main takeaway was every time I do that and I'm aware of what I'm doing and I'm practicing awareness, I'm sharpening and I'm
Yes.
getting better at this. It's funny I say sharpening because I'm like, you're smarter, you're sharper. It's such a masculine approach, but it's also softening because you're
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
relaxing into the moment.
Mhm.
And that was such a game changer. The whole book, I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed that you brought in your story into it. I even enjoyed the sciencey stuff, after I got through it, and I'm happy I didn't bail on it. And then how it's practical, and nurturing intelligence, and that was a big part in it. Part of this book is it's not just IQ. There's all
Mhm.
these other ways for you to mark your intelligence, but also nurture and grow your intelligence
Mhm.
so we can get smarter right now. We can get
Yeah.
smarter. At the end of this podcast, you're going to be significantly smarter for sure.
Yeah.
but,
Yes,
but,
you
but
will.
yeah, but to nurture intelligence is beautiful because that is something that again it feels nurturing. It feels feminine. It feels
Mhm.
so wholesome rather than it's like cram these books. Like that's
Yeah.
the end of it, right?
Yeah, cram these and then we'll test you and see what you
Yeah.
retained. It's like, I just feel like we are doing everything wrong in the space of education. But I think also, one of the ways I've learned a lot of this practically is just having my kids and like seeing, them just be so beginner's mind with everything. And
Mm,
that, like you were saying, time for them, it doesn't even exist. That's where most of our struggles as parents end up coming from, is like trying to force them into like a schedule, or force them into a time regime, and like, we only have 3 minutes to go, like, hurry up, like, I'm going to set a timer, let's go. And it's always like this kind of like pulling them out of the moment. And like, they don't want to be pulled out of the moment. They're like in the moment, they're so like, I'm like, I see with my kids, I'm like, oh, like, you are the mind that we were destined to have. Like, we evolved to be you, and then we fucked it all up,
yeah.
it's like, why do we
Totally.
do that? Why do we, I don't know why we do that, but we do it, we keep
Right?
doing it. And yeah.
We were born little Buddhas, and then
Yes.
it's like then they add all these things where it's like taxes and mortgage and worry
Yeah.
and societal judgment and what your
Judgment.
family thinks and
Yeah.
conditioning and the news, and it's like wang, 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 and then
Yeah.
you look at these kids and they're just like, "Sunshine, trees, look at this dog," and they're just so in it.
Yes.
Bliss, that looks like bliss.
Yeah, and that's like the invention thing you were talking about. It's like, sometimes they'll come up with some crazy ideas. Like, they're like, "Oh, that's a problem. Like, why don't we do this with it?" And it's like, yeah, why don't we?
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, people are hungry in the world. Why don't we like distribute some food to them?"
"Make them spaghetti, mom." You're like, "Yeah."
Yeah, yeah. It's like, yeah, why don't we? Like,
Yeah.
oh, like, these are the things causing suffering. Why don't we fix that? It's like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes, like, even just like the straight up inventions are just so cool. And it's like, yeah, I wish that we could like go to a 3D printing
Yeah.
workshop and like go make the thing you just said, because that
Yeah.
is an amazing idea. And so it's like, with that openness, they're just all like taking in everything, and like, they're just like, yeah, how about this, how about this, how about this? And and then we
Uh,
just shut it down. We're like, no, time to go, put on your clothes, like, let's
yeah.
go, get out of here, um change your clothes or something like
I
that.
bet
And
you have epic superhuman kids, though, if they're getting to learn all this amazing stuff from you. Uh, and I wanted to ask you, since you are, in education, you're a professor, and you
mhm,
must see so many different people's ways of learning, and including in your kids, like
yeah,
everyone learns differently, right? So some people are
definitely.
visual, some people are
Yeah,
analytical, and you see graphs and numbers. I like to see a picture of it,
yeah,
and I learn very much so experientially. Like if you show me how to
mhm,
do something, and then I do it once, and you're like, yeah, that's the way I'll know how to do it. Then like I'm really good at directions that way. If I go there once, I can get there every time.
yeah,
But that's like the way my brain is, and then when it's like read this complicated graph, this complicated like big block of text,
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
what are the different types of learning, and yeah, how do we put ourselves in a position to succeed once we know our different ways of learning?
So I think that there's kind of like two main classifications that a lot of learning specialists use, and they say like it's like visual or audio, right? It's like
Hmm.
visual or oral, right? So it's like you hear it or you see it, right?
Hmm.
And some people, like, they learn better from seeing, and then other people, they learn better from hearing. And I think that that is, useful, and it's fun to sometimes be like, which one am I? Like, what do I do better? But like, I think that the more important thing to think about is that everybody benefits from connection when they're learning. So that's something I talk about in the book, is about, trying to engineer it so that your learning experiences are connecting with another person or other people. And so that might mean, doing whatever you are going to do. You want to take in new information about something, doing that thing, or you want to learn a skill, doing it with a group, or doing it with one other person, or doing it with a family member. It's like, it can be like a little person in your family, like a kid, or it can be a grandparent, or it could be, just, a sibling or whatever. It's like, um, there are so many people who are ready to learn a new thing with you. And I think that the way that, so that's how I teach in my classroom. I always start with people's experiences and sharing experiences. That's the way that we get into any new concept.
Mm.
Because yeah, it's true, the syllabi in college classes, they're organized around concepts and skills, right? And so mine in particular are organized around concepts. So it's like there's these concepts, they've never heard them, they've never thought of them. This is like all new stuff. But we're going to first start with what we know from our own experiences. And as we get a conversation going about those experiences, and as we validate each other's experiences, and we feel seen and we feel heard, we then can incorporate some of the information that I'm giving them, right? And so
Mhm.
I think that having that power of connection and connectivity in the learning experience and the learning moment is really key.
Mm. I love that. It really reminds me of the head coach of the Lakers, and he was the Bulls, the most winning coach. Um, Something Phil Jackson, and his whole thing was when he was coaching and teaching people, he'd always have this, like, he'd say it's actually important to come and like give a hug or give a high five or like, rub their shoulders and like
Mhm.
connect in that way. And I like doing that as a boss, where I'll come in and I'll make sure I like say hi to everybody and like get a hug or a high five, whatever it is, and like actually connect. And
Yes.
I've seen that's like such a game changer. And if I
Mhm.
give out anything like feedback or a coaching or teaching point, and I just shoot a quick WhatsApp message, it's never as effective. It's
Right.
actually like exponentially more conflict, especially
Yeah.
if it's like criticism or feedback. But when I'm in person and I like they're connecting with them, like that
Mhm.
makes the game changer. The
Mhm.
connection element really makes so much sense there. Yeah, we can take in so much more information if there's a connection during the information. That's why coaching with me, my clients love, because I really connect with them, and so I really like, I want to hang out. Let's go hit a workout. Let's, if we're in the same place, let's go. Let's get together. Let's share a meal, and let's go over this in person. And then they can soak that in, and they're having an experience,
Yes.
rather than just like, oh, do this, and this. Okay, bye. See you next week.
Yeah. And the
That-
other reason why it works so well for learning is because when you learn, you're always butting up against what you don't know.
Mhm.
And that sometimes feels like, stressful, or it feels embarrassing, or it feels
Mhm.
shameful. There are a lot of feelings that come up when you hit that kind of edge of what you know. Sometimes you feel like you're never going to get it or whatever. But when you have another person or people, who are learning with you, you can talk about that, and you can share how you're feeling, and you can also compare it to past experiences. And when it's hard, you can have someone who's got your back and is like, yeah, we're going to get through this, right? It's kind
Mhm.
of like coaching, right? It's like
Yeah,
you're saying, like, I'm here for you, right? Like, I'm gonna do this with you. I'm not gonna leave you. We're gonna work together. We're gonna move forward, right?
I love that. That's so powerful, and just to wrapping up, I'd love to leave the audience, just to
Mhm.
summarize, and from what I gathered, to rethink your intelligence and become a more intelligent, nurture your intelligence, it would be around, um, know that you can always learn.
Mhm.
Your brain is plastic. It can morph and mold at any time. You can learn new things
Mhm.
and build new neural pathways. Your intelligence is not based on your race or culture. It's your environment can shape your intelligence a bit, but that you can use that as a positive and not just a
Exactly.
negative. You don't
Right.
have to make excuses about being born in the rough area or this or that or that. You
Yeah.
can you can shift and grow around that,
Mhm.
and that mindfulness is an absolute key to becoming smarter, and being aware of your environment is key, because that's how you're going to be able to actually capture and evolve and capture information and evolve and grow from that.
Mhm.
And that, wait, was there the other one? There was the other one. I'll let you take it over from there. What did I miss?
No, I think that's everything. I mean, really,
Yeah.
that's everything. You covered neuroplasticity, you
Hmm.
covered, growth, like how we are always growing. And, like I guess the last thing I would say is just that, life is about coming to that mastery of your own intelligence. It's about coming to that awareness. It's a process of awakening. And so
Mm.
we're doing it, so just feel good in that, like feel good about yourself, give yourself a big hug, because you're doing
Mm.
it.
I love that, and I remember the last thing that I was gonna forget to say
Mm-hmm.
was connection, that we learn more
Yes.
out of connection, and I had so much fun connecting with you, Rena, really. This was such a great
Yeah.
conversation for me, like, I really enjoyed, and I love that you shared personal things that, an Ink, Pray, Love exclusive, so that's awesome, but sorry,
Yeah.
mom, on your end, and, that it's so beautiful to see that someone who's a professor at this university is accessible because of our common bond and that connection over, hey, let's grow our minds,
Mhm.
and I love that, and you clearly have an altruistic attitude about it because you want to empower people and their journey in intelligence, and you
Yeah.
want to empower people that anybody can learn, and it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your race or gender is. You can get smarter, and intelligence is accessible to you. So I really
Yes.
appreciate you for that. So I love what you do, and I appreciate your time. Really, thank you so much.
Thank
Um,
you.
where can people get your books? How many? You have a bunch of books out right now. How can
Yeah,
they get in
I think
contact with you?
right now, if you go to the HarperCollins website, you can find Rethinking Intelligence there, but you can also get it at your local bookstore. You can get it on, I mean, a lot of people order on Amazon. I prefer steering people towards independent bookstores because,
Hmm.
they have our all of our community's best interests at heart. So, but you can get it basically anywhere, any online bookstore, anywhere. Yeah,
I love it. I really
yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you so much. We'll put a link in the show notes. People can grab Rethinking Intelligence. I highly recommend it to everybody. This book was super cool, and you'll feel empowered to rethink your intelligence and rebuild it and revamp it and just become a smarter, more powerful human today. And no matter what you have been through in life, maybe you were a drug dealer or did lots of drugs in Rena's case. And then
Exactly.
I don't know what that's like. And you can then go on to do amazing things and empower people. It's super inspiring. Thank you so much, Rena.
Thank you.
I love this. And to everybody, please share this episode if you got value from it. That's the way I'm going to be able to grow this podcast. Please share, subscribe, give it the review. Please do all the things on all platforms for me. I'm loving doing this podcast. And the more that it grows, the more I'm able to get into rooms and virtually or in person with people like Rena and get this value to you all. So please do that thing and have an amazing rest of your day and rethink your intelligence. Peace, homies. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ink Pray Love podcast. I hope you found it inspiring, entertaining, funny, and also feeling a little bit more present and connected to yourself. Please leave a review and like and subscribe and do all those things. I'd really appreciate that. As well as if you're feeling in a giving mood, this podcast is there for the charities that I love to support. Go to www.arenbaya.com/charity and get some of those good karma points. This podcast is brought to you by Lighthouse Studios in Bali, as well as Full Reset Coaching. That is my coaching practice. And if you're looking for help in business, inner game impact, and building your legacy to be something you're proud of, your brand, your business, and how you walk the earth and who you impact, and also having the mindset and the heart set to be able to be happy handling it all, I'm here for you. Just DM me. Let's go. Peace out, homies. I'll see you on the next episode.